rise.
The first question that we have is from Katherine Finley from Fairhope. They want to know who pays the tariff. Is it consumers or through the exporting country?
So right now, what we just saw in the report is that we haven't seen inflation at all. If y'all saw the report, 0.2% on units last month. So if there was inflation there,
Who pays tariffs?
Current president and CEO of the Alabama Hospital Association, Dane Howard, says that the current financial strain on the state's hospitals is the worst that she's seen in her 30-year career. She says with the premium tax credits expiring, it won't have an immediate impact, but one that will grow over time. Howard estimates that 100,000 Alabamians will lose health care coverage if the tax credits expire.
There's a reason why they have a subsidized plan, and that's because they couldn't afford. They're working, but they can't afford the cost of an insurance plan fully, plus everything else, your expenses in life.
Meaning they will lose access to routine care. Howard says when that happens, people who are uninsured will go to the emergency room when seeking primary care.
If we are looking at the potential of adding another 100,000 individuals into the uninsured population, then that just adds to a stressor that is already straining hospital finances.
That was Republican Congressman Barry Moore getting booed out of a recent town hall in Alabama. Alabama is furious right now at what's going on in that state and what's happening with this Trump administration that made all of these promises and hasn't delivered anything and has made things worse. Healthcare is being taken away. Electricity prices are rising. Homes not affordable. People are struggling, and people know that inflation is hitting them. They know that inflation is causing prices to surge. From that same town hall of MAGA Republican Barry Moore, watch as his constituents ask a very basic question: who pays the tariffs? Here, play this clip. The first question that we have is from Katherine Finley from Fairhope. They want to know who pays the tariffs. Is it consumers or the exporting country? So right now, what we just saw in a report is that we haven't seen inflation at all. But you all saw the report. Then in Alabama, over 100,000 people may lose their health care as the Affordable Care Act subsidies are set to expire and hospitals are struggling to stay open. Let's play this clip. The current president and CEO of the Alabama Hospital Association, Dan Howard, says that the current financial strain on the state's hospitals is the worst that she's seen in her 30-year career. By the way, I am trying to do my best to gather all the information I can for you and share it with you. Please leave your likes and comments, and I would be grateful if you subscribed. Let's continue. She says with the premium tax credits expiring, it won't have any immediate impact, but one that will grow over time. Howard estimates that 100,000 Alabamians will lose health care coverage if the tax credits expire. There's a reason why they have a subsidized plan, and that's because they couldn't afford it. They're working, but they can't afford the cost of an insurance plan fully plus everything else, your expenses in life, meaning they will lose access to routine care. Howard says when that happens, people who are uninsured will go to the emergency room when seeking primary care. If we are looking at the potential of adding another 100,000 individuals into the uninsured population, then that just adds to a stressor that is already straining hospital finances. Electricity prices in Alabama are amongst the highest in the entire country. Let's play this. The price of your power bill is a very complex issue. In fact, we'd argue power is an overarching theme here. Political power, the power of profitability, and your power to change it. We're going to walk you through all of it. Alabama power customers are paying some of the highest electric bills in the entire country. That's Daniel Tate, president of Energy Alabama, fighting to lower Alabama power bills. He's right. Alabama has the third highest residential monthly electric bills in the country. On average, $173. Alabama power customers account for more than half that number. In Alabama, we use more power than most states due to our climate. Take a look. Alabama consumes the fourth largest amount of electricity in the country, and our bills are still the highest. Alabama Power says the bills are higher due to high consumption. And then you have economic growth slowing in Alabama. Let's play it. Well, some Alabama leaders have concerns over the future of state funding. That's because new data shows economic growth is slowing in the state, which could make for tighter budgets down the road. CBS 42 state Capitol reporter Ryan Hall brings us the latest from Montgomery. Leaders explain a decrease in Alabama's revenue growth could force state agencies and classrooms to cut back on spending. Now I want to bring in someone from Alabama who made a big announcement, the former senator from Alabama who's running for governor of Alabama, Doug Jones. Senator, it's great to see you here, and you want to turn that governor's seat blue. You know, it's a fight for sure. Talk to us about what's going on in the state. Well, look, I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. I mean, you guys have been great to me over the years, and I really appreciate this. We had an amazing launch, but, I don't at this point need to say anything. You set the table with 4 minutes worth of everything going on in Alabama and all the issues and all the problems. The only thing that you may have missed, well, there are a couple things. One, the farmers are hurting. I mean, our soybean farmers and others are losing markets because of all the Trump, what I call Trump-Tuberville tariffs. And that last piece that you played was especially interesting because it's not just a downturn in the economy, but Alabama has been spending money, COVID money, federal money like a drunk sailor over the last few years. And now that money's gone. The old ARPA money is gone. We have spent it on prisons. We have spent it on other things that it wasn't quite designated for. So the next 4 years are not going to be that easy in Alabama. But I think it's time to give folks a choice. I think it is absolutely time. People are looking for change. They're looking for a responsive state government, just like with a federal government. So there's an interesting, I think, and unique opportunity in Alabama right now to make a lot of progress, right? I mean, there's a direct cause and effect of these failed Republican policies. I mean, they've had the opportunity in Alabama for a very long time to show that their ideas, whatever they may be, work. And we're seeing the outcome of that. And the report card seems to be an F, or if you were a generous grader, a D minus. But I think most people see it's an F. And people are expressing the frustration. But how do you convert that into the kind of deep partisan feelings that just people grow up with, where they just are kind of told, well, I don't vote for Dems for whatever reason. How do you make that connection knowing that the Republican policies are what's causing them to suffer? Look, I think you got to do what Democrats in the South haven't always done, and that is try to really get back to basics and to meet people, to go where they are, to listen to them. I think Democrats got away from that. But this is the same song with a different verse. I mean, all this happened before when the Democrats were in control. There was an old saying down here that I would rather vote for a yellow dog than a Republican. And that's the way this state handled for so long. But then Democrats just kind of let their guard down. They saw too many things happening. Republicans did a good job of connecting the dots between those failed policies and a one-party state with Democrats in control. And so in 2010, it was a little bit of a fast process over a few years. And in 2010, Republicans took complete control of the state legislature. They took control of all the state offices. There's not been a single Democrat elected statewide except for me in 2017. So we're going to do two things. First of all, we're going to start connecting those dots. We've got to now to November 5th or whatever the date is for Election Day to connect those dots between these failed policies and all of the problems that people are seeing. Their loss of health care, their skyrocketing electricity bills, the farmers losing markets. We're going to connect the dots. But we're also going to do something that hadn't been done in a long time. And that is we are going to field a slate of candidates in every statewide office. A slate of candidates that are credible, that can be competitive, and we're going to offer people choices. And we're going to make those that are in power right now defend the ill-fated choices that they've made over the years, whether it's the refusal to expand Medicaid or whatever that is costing people their livelihoods, costing people their money. That's what we're going to do over the coming year. And look, we know all of this. We're an underdog, but that's okay. Underdogs win things all the time. And I think that we're on the right side of history on all of these issues, not just on one or two. Now, there's still a primary, of course, in the Democratic Party, and that's scheduled for sometime in May. The Republican favorite out there is Tommy Tuberville, who you have experience running against, and the people in Alabama have seen the types of things that he said. He's a rubber stamp for everything that people are frustrated and upset with. And then there's this clip right here that I want to show you from my buddy Pablo Manriquez, who interviewed Tommy Tuberville. I could show you a lot of clips of Tommy Tuberville, and we can go on for hours of some of the stuff that this guy said, but this one to me is really kind of emblematic. I think everybody believes that there should be a strong border. But what Tommy Tuberville says is, if you look a certain way, or if you hang out with people who look a certain way, that means you should be arrested as an American citizen and rounded up. And that's just the price to pay for being an American and hanging out with people who may look a little different, or being in a restaurant with someone who's American. Just watch this, because this to me is where there's a point to be made about strong borders. But then he takes it to this authoritarian way that I think people like, whoa, 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 I didn't vote for that. Here, let's play this clip. So, Senator, do you care if U.S. citizens accidentally get detained in ICE raids? If U.S. citizens, yeah, it's been happening a lot. It's been happening a lot with veterans in particular. Yeah. Well, first of all, don't put yourself in a situation where that happens, okay? And I'm sure with all the illegals we have in this country, you're going to probably have some mistakes happen. That's going to happen. Yeah. I mean, it's statements like that. You could be out and about Alabama and you're at a restaurant and you get rounded up and Tommy Tuberville's like, hey, it's the price we pay. Yeah. No, look, everything he says along the lines of immigration and really even about race and religion are pretty disgusting in most instances. I mean, this guy he is a divider. That's the other thing about our race. We're going to try to be a unifier. And I think you know me, and you know that has been my history, reaching across the aisle, working with folks, trying to do our best to find common ground to do things, not Tommy Tuberville. He is the divider in chief. The things he says about immigrants, whether they are here legally or not, are pretty disgusting. What he says about Muslims, what he says when he talked about white nationalists in the military, that he was okay with that. This is someone who divides the people of Alabama, divides America by race and by religion. And I just don't think that that's what people ultimately want. I think people want to see folks working together. And again, we've got a chance now to show him for who he really is. We did not have that chance in 2020 for a lot of reasons, but we've got that chance now. He's got a record. He's got a lot of statements out there like that. And you just can't walk all of those things back. Yeah. He says, regarding Muslims, Islam is a cult. Islamists aren't here to assimilate. They're here to conquer. And there's 22,000 to 23,000 plus people who are Muslim in the state, which goes to kind of a final point here, which is just leadership in general, behaving like a grown-up. You and I can get into policy discussions, and they're important, and we did that at the beginning of this interview. But for me, what drew me to doing this and leaving my other job is the behavior I felt wasn't grown-up, wasn't adult, wasn't leadership. It wasn't these skills. It wasn't reflecting empathy. And I think right now, people want to look at leaders who they go, you know what? This person cares, and they're doing a good job, and they're trying, and they're not out there just going to Mar-a-Lago parties with half-naked women in martini glasses, like Donald Trump attacking Rob Reiner after his son was murdered, likely with the suspect being his son, and Donald Trump mocks that on his official social account. Or Donald Trump doing misinformation about a school shooting in Brown like a Twitter troll. People are like, just stop. These are leadership positions, and Tuberville's like that. So I think that's an important point also that doesn't get spoken about enough. I totally agree with you. And the fact of the matter is, everything that you see and hear from Tuberville, everything is a sports analogy. I mean, and think about this. When you are a coach or whatever, and everything is that analogy, you're always in a US versus them, winners versus losers mentality. That's the kind of thing he does. Well, I'm going to tell you, the people's health care in Alabama, it's not a game. Their education, it's not a game. The fact that we've got communities in Alabama that are suffering is not a game. This is not a sports metaphor. As I said Friday, Alabama is not a stadium, and we are not the scoreboard. We are all working together to try to be better folks and to try to have a better state. And I quoted the other day the song by the Highwomen called Crowded Table. You know, I want a house with a crowded table where everybody has a seat by the fire. Those are the things I think people ultimately really want, where everyone is treated with dignity, respect, and that we can work together for a better Alabama. This guy doesn't even live in Alabama. If he did, he would have proved it by now. He doesn't even live here. So how can you really expect to be a governor for all the people of Alabama if you spend all of your time down on the beach in Florida? Senator, before we go, where can people find out more about the campaign and any final message to our 6 million subscribers? Well, look, I really appreciate that. You can go to DougJones.com. That's the easiest way. It's at Doug Jones on X and Blue Sky, and I'm going to be doing more Instagram, probably even a little TikTok down the road. But DougJones.com will give you everything that you need to help us with the campaign for financial volunteers, whatever. And just stay tuned. It's going to be an evolving process. We're going to be involved. We're going to be out there in the community a lot. That's something else that you won't expect to see from Tuberville. We're going to be out there talking to people, meeting people while he stays home and hides behind whatever facade he's got down there in Santa Rosa Beach. Senator Doug Jones running for governor of the great state of Alabama. We wish you the best. Thanks so much. Appreciate being here. Let me add some additional context here, because what's happening in Alabama is a microcosm of what's happening across red states that have been run by Republicans for decades. The promises versus the reality, the rhetoric versus the results. And people are finally starting to connect the dots between the policies and the pain they're experiencing in their daily lives. Barry Moore getting booed at his own town hall. That's not normal. That's what happens when your constituents realize you've been lying to them and your policies are making their lives worse, not better. And the question about tariffs is so basic, so fundamental, that the fact he can't or won't answer it honestly tells you everything about Republican economic messaging. Who pays tariffs? Consumers do. American families do. But Republicans can't admit that, because then they'd have to acknowledge that Trump's signature policy is a tax on working Americans that raises prices on everything from groceries to electronics to clothing. So they deflect, they lie, they change the subject. And look at what's actually happening in Alabama. Over 100,000 people about to lose health care coverage because Republicans let the ACA subsidies expire. These are working people who can't afford insurance without help. And what happens when they lose coverage? They don't just go without health care. They show up at emergency rooms for primary care, which is the most expensive way to deliver health care and drives up costs for hospitals that are already struggling financially. The CEO of the Alabama Hospital Association says this is the worst financial strain she's seen in 30 years. 30 years. And it's about to get worse because 100,000 more uninsured people are about to flood into a system that's already on the brink. Electricity prices are the third highest in the country, $173 average monthly bills, and Alabama Power customers account for more than half that number. Why? Not just because of consumption, because the regulatory structure allows the power company to charge whatever they want without meaningful oversight or competition. Economic growth is slowing. State revenues are declining. Doug Jones made a crucial point about how Alabama has been spending federal COVID relief money like a drunk sailor, and now that money is gone. They spent it on prisons instead of what it was designated for. They spent it on pet projects, and now they're facing budget cuts to education and essential services. Farmers are losing markets because of Trump's tariffs. The Trump Tuberville tariffs, as Doug Jones correctly calls them. Soybean farmers who used to sell to China and other countries are getting crushed because those markets went to Brazil and Argentina and aren't coming back even when tariffs eventually end. This is the Republican record in Alabama, and it's an F. Not a D- if you're generous, an F. Complete failure on health care, on electricity costs, on economic growth, on supporting farmers, on every measurable outcome that matters to working families. And Doug Jones is right that Democrats need to connect those dots. People are feeling the pain. They know their health care premiums are unaffordable. They know their electricity bills are crushing them. They know their grocery bills are higher because of tariffs. but they may not have connected that pain to the specific policies and politicians causing it. That's the work. Showing people that Republican control of state government for 15 years has produced these results. That one-party rule without competition or accountability leads to corruption and incompetence and policies that benefit the powerful while hurting regular people. And Tommy Tuberville represents everything wrong with that system. A guy who doesn't even live in Alabama, who spends his time at his beach house in Florida while pretending to represent Alabama, who sees everything through sports analogies of winners and losers instead of understanding that governing is about serving people, not keeping score. That clip Pablo got where Tuberville says, if U.S. citizens get rounded up in ICE raids, well, they shouldn't have put themselves in that situation. Think about what he's saying. If you look Hispanic, if you're eating at a Mexican restaurant, if you're with friends or family who might be undocumented, then you deserve to be detained even though you're a U.S. citizen. That's the price we pay. No, that's not the price we pay. That's authoritarianism. That's collective punishment. That's treating American citizens as acceptable collateral damage in a cruel immigration enforcement regime. And Tuberville thinks that's fine. His comments about Muslims are even worse, calling Islam a cult, saying Muslims aren't here to assimilate, but to conquer. There are 22,000 to 23,000 Muslims in Alabama, citizens, taxpayers, members of the community, and their potential governor thinks their religion is a cult and they're here to conquer America. That's not leadership. That's bigotry. That's the kind of divisive, hateful rhetoric that tears communities apart instead of bringing people together. And Doug Jones is right to emphasize the contrast. He's run on being a unifier, someone who reaches across the aisle, finds common ground, treats people with dignity and respect, regardless of their politics or religion or ethnicity. That's what leadership looks like. Alabama is not a stadium and we are not the scoreboard. That's such a perfect way to frame the alternative to Tuberville's sports mentality. Governing isn't about winners and losers. It's about making sure everyone has health care, everyone can afford electricity, every farmer can sell their crops, every kid gets a good education. I want a house with a crowded table where everybody has a seat by the fire. That's the vision Doug Jones is offering. Inclusion, dignity, working together for a better Alabama, versus Tuberville's divisive, winner-take-all, U.S. versus them mentality, where if you look wrong or worship wrong or hang out with the wrong people, you don't deserve dignity or rights. And the fact that Tuberville doesn't even live in Alabama matters. If you're going to be governor, you should actually live in the state you're governing. You should be part of the community, understand what people are going through, be present for the struggles and the joys, not hiding out on a beach in Florida while collecting a paycheck and voting however Trump tells you to vote. Doug Jones has a real shot here if he can get the message out and build the infrastructure. He won statewide in 2017 by connecting with voters, listening to them, offering real solutions. He can do it again if Democrats show up, if independents and moderate Republicans who are disgusted with Tuberville's extremism give him a chance. And he's right that Democrats need to field candidates for every statewide office, not just governor. Every office. Give people choices. Make Republicans defend their records. Show voters there's an alternative. The Republican monopoly on power in Alabama has produced failure after failure. Healthcare crisis, electricity price gouging, economic stagnation, farmers losing markets, Medicaid not expanded despite federal money available, prisons built with COVID relief funds instead of helping people. That's the record. And if Doug Jones and Democrats can connect those dots, can show people that their daily struggles are direct results of specific policy choices by specific politicians, then Alabama could flip, or at least become competitive again. Create accountability. Force Republicans to actually govern instead of just maintaining power. This is why the 2026 midterms matter so much. Not just Congress, but governorships and state legislatures. Because that's where most policy that affects daily life gets made. Healthcare, education, electricity regulation, criminal justice, all of it happens mostly at the state level. And if Democrats can start winning back governorships in places like Alabama, if they can show people that their policies actually work better than Republican policies, that creates a foundation for winning federal races too. So support Doug Jones. Go to DougJones.com. Donate if you can. Volunteer if you're in Alabama. Share his message with anyone you know in the state, because this race matters, not just for Alabama, but as a test case for whether Democrats can compete in deep red states by offering real solutions to real problems instead of just writing off those voters as unreachable. People in Alabama are suffering under Republican policies. They're ready for change. They're booing their own congressman at town halls. They're asking basic questions about tariffs that he can't answer. They're seeing their health care disappear and their electricity bills skyrocket and their economic opportunities shrink. Doug Jones is offering them an alternative. A governor who lives in Alabama, understands their struggles, has a record of actually working for them, and treats everyone with dignity, regardless of race or religion or immigration status. That's the choice. And the outcome will tell us a lot about whether red states can become competitive again, whether Democratic policies can win when they're actually communicated effectively, whether people care more about results than partisan labels. Subscribe to follow this race and all the other critical 2026 contests. Hit that 6 million subscriber mark this month. And remember, every race matters, every state matters, and change is possible when people are willing to fight for it.